The world's most powerful leaders gathered in Kananaskis, Alberta, for what was expected to be a pivotal G7 summit. Tensions were already running high, with global issues like trade, climate change, and security looming over the agenda. Delegates and journalists alike braced themselves for tough negotiations and the unpredictable presence of President Donald Trump. Many anticipated a few trademark Trumpian fireworks, sharp words, bold statements, and perhaps a dramatic moment or two. But what no one foresaw was the sudden appearance of an empty chair at the U.S. spot, a silent but powerful signal that something extraordinary was unfolding. President Donald Trump abruptly departed the G7 summit before its official conclusion, leaving stunned allies, a half-finished agenda, and a room full of unanswered questions. The shock was palpable as world leaders scrambled to adjust. The official explanation for his exit was the rapidly escalating crisis in the Middle East, a region already fraught with tension and uncertainty. Yet, Trump's own cryptic and sometimes contradictory statements to the press only deepened the mystery, leaving both allies and the media guessing about his true motivations. One moment, he was dominating the discussions, steering conversations with his characteristic bravado and unpredictability. The next, his motorcade was seen speeding away from the venue, leaving Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney and other leaders to manage the diplomatic fallout and confusion. French President Emmanuel Macron tried to put a positive spin on Trump's abrupt exit, suggesting it was a bold move for peace in the Middle East, and that the U.S. president was acting in the world's best interest. But Trump quickly took to social media to rebuke Macron, dismissing his explanation and calling the French leader simply wrong, further fueling confusion and controversy. Trump then declared that his reasons for leaving were much bigger than the Middle East, a vague statement that sent journalists and diplomats into a frenzy of speculation and left allies anxious about what might come next. The empty chair at the summit table became a powerful symbol, one of a United States suddenly disengaged, alliances shaken to their core, and a summit meant to foster unity now broadcasting division and uncertainty to the world. The G7 drama unfolded in a world already on edge, as leaders gathered under the shadow of a rapidly escalating crisis. The Middle East, long a region of simmering tensions, was now spiraling into open war, with violence erupting across borders and alliances being tested like never before. Israel's Operation Rising Lion marked a dramatic escalation, as Israeli forces launched precision strikes on Iranian military and nuclear sites. This bold move crossed a red line, provoking a fierce and immediate response from Iran. Missiles tore through cities, leaving devastation in their wake. Civilians bore the brunt of the violence. Families displaced, neighborhoods reduced to rubble, and dozens killed in both Israel and Iran, as the world watched in horror. By the time the G7 convened, the conflict had overshadowed every other agenda item. The specter of a wider regional war loomed large, and fears of global instability mounted with each passing hour. In the midst of this chaos, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu intensified the rhetoric, announcing that Israeli intelligence had thwarted not one, but two Iranian plots to assassinate former President Trump in 2024, a claim that sent shockwaves through diplomatic circles. Netanyahu went further, labeling Trump enemy number one for Iran, personalizing the conflict and drawing the American president directly into the heart of the crisis. Whether the assassination claims were true or not, the narrative now linked Trump's fate to the chaos engulfing the Middle East, raising the stakes for the United States and its allies. Around the globe, people anxiously followed every update, holding their breath as the threat of a broader conflict grew. The world hoped desperately for de-escalation, but the drums of war only grew louder. The G7's carefully planned agenda was quickly derailed, hijacked by a crisis that threatened to engulf not just the region, but the entire globe in turmoil. As tensions reached a fever pitch, Trump's sudden and unexpected departure from the summit only heightened the sense of uncertainty, leaving world leaders and citizens alike wondering what would come next. The G7 is more than a summit. It's a symbol of unity among the world's leading democracies. Its power lies in collective influence. When these nations act together, the world listens. The annual summit is meant to project strength, with a joint communiqué setting the tone for global policy. Disagreements are expected, but unity is the goal. Trump's public spat with Macron and abrupt exit shattered that image, exposing dysfunction and emboldening adversaries. The leader of the group's most powerful member walking away crippled the summit's purpose. Allies were left uncertain, initiative stalled, and the G7's role as a stabilizing force was thrown into doubt. In a world craving order, Trump's exit left only a vacuum. America's stance on the Israel-Iran conflict was a study in contradictions. Trump privately backed Israel's offensive, yet publicly called for peace and denied U.S. involvement. His social media posts mixed denial, threats, and boasts of deal-making prowess. Allies were left guessing, was the U.S. a silent partner or a neutral broker? Even Trump's own press secretary contradicted him, citing the Middle East as his reason for leaving, while Trump hinted at something much bigger. The confusion extended to his administration, suggesting chaos at the top. World leaders struggled to interpret America's true intentions. The lack of clarity deepened global instability and eroded trust. The world was left to wonder, what was Trump really up to? The G7 summit, already shaken by Trump's exit, fractured under the weight of crisis. On Israel-Iran, the US backed Israel, while Europe blamed Iran, but condemned Israel's heavy strikes. Japan broke ranks, denouncing Israel's attacks, highlighting the group's diverging interests. Without US leadership, divisions festered, and the G7's ability to act collectively collapsed. Economic tensions added fuel. Trump's threatened tariffs left trade talks in limbo. European leaders warned of damage to the global economy, but Trump's departure left critical issues unresolved. The summit, meant to showcase cooperation, became a stage for discord. Each leader pulled in a different direction, national interests overriding unity. The absence of a unifying American presence left the G7 looking more like bickering neighbors than powerful allies. As the Middle East crisis dominated headlines, Ukraine's war faded into the background. President Zelensky came to Canada seeking support, only to find the world distracted. Russia's brutal campaign continued, with staggering casualties and no sign of peace. Trump's sudden exit canceled a crucial meeting with Zelensky, and jeopardized a new sanctions package against Russia. Without U.S. backing, the G7's response to Russia weakened, sending a message of wavering commitment to Kyiv. For Ukraine, the summit was a missed opportunity, its struggle overshadowed by new crises and Trump's unpredictability. The fight for freedom in Ukraine now competed for attention in a world overwhelmed by chaos. Trump's walkout had immediate, far-reaching consequences. The G7's core agenda, sanctions on Russia, collapsed without U.S. support, handing Putin a diplomatic win. Allies worldwide questioned America's reliability, forced to consider new alliances or hedge with rivals like China. Leaders like Macron and Carney returned home empty-handed, their credibility damaged. The image of a fractured G7 fueled public cynicism and emboldened opposition parties. Trump's actions set a dangerous precedent, abandoning diplomacy when it gets tough. This my way or the highway approach risks spreading, undermining multilateral dialogue. The empty chair in Kananaskis became a warning for the future of global governance. The world saw not just a summit in disarray, but a system at risk. In diplomacy, predictability builds trust. When leaders act in ways that are expected, it reassures allies and helps maintain stability on the world stage. Consistency allows nations to plan, negotiate, and resolve conflicts with a sense of security. Trump, however, turned unpredictability into his signature weapon. He relished keeping both friends and foes guessing, making it nearly impossible to anticipate his next move. By leaving the G7 abruptly and offering no clear explanation, he seized the global narrative. Suddenly, the focus shifted from policy debates to the spectacle of his actions. The world stopped talking about policy and started talking about Trump. Every headline, every news cycle revolved around his unpredictability, overshadowing the summit's original agenda. This strategy keeps adversaries off balance, never sure if he'll strike, negotiate, or tweet. Diplomats and world leaders found themselves constantly recalibrating, unsure of where America stood. It's the madman theory in action, volatility as deterrence, but also a recipe for miscalculation. The risk is that confusion can spiral into crisis as no one knows what to expect next. At home, his base sees unpredictability as strength, America first, unbound by global elites. To them, it's a sign of independence and toughness, a leader who refuses to play by the old rules. The cryptic "stay tuned" message turns diplomacy into a reality show, keeping supporters engaged. Every tweet or statement becomes an event, drawing in millions of viewers and dominating the news. But unpredictability unnerves allies, making coordination impossible and weakening alliances. Partners are left in the dark, unable to plan or respond effectively to global challenges. NATO and the G7 depend on trust. Trump's approach forces partners to act alone. The sense of unity that once defined these alliances begins to erode, replaced by suspicion and hesitation. The very alliances that built American power now stand on shaky ground, their future uncertain in a world where unpredictability reigns. As the G7 summit ended, the world faced more questions than answers. Trump's silent exit and cryptic pronouncements plunged global relations into uncertainty. The risk of a wider Middle East war loomed, with U.S. signals unclear and alliances shaken. Trust in America as a reliable partner was damaged, forcing nations to rethink their security strategies. Domestically, Trump's actions deepened divisions, with protests and party splits reflecting confusion over America's role. The White House's silence about the much bigger reason for Trump's return only fueled anxiety. In a world desperate for steady leadership, the message was, stay tuned. Allies, adversaries, and citizens alike were left waiting for the next storm to break.